In The Force Awakens, Han Solo attempts to turn his son back to the light side of the Force, but this ultimately fails and results in his own death after Kylo Ren impaled him through the abdomen. But how would things change in the timeline if Han Solo did turn Kylo Ren back to the light? After Han yells at Kylo Ren and speaks to him, he feels a shift in the man standing across him. Kylo was upset. The path he was currently on only led him to pain and regret. He missed his family and all of his loved ones that he left behind. In his mind, it was too late. No one would ever accept him back after all the damage he had caused. Kylo voiced his concerns to his father, but Han Solo told him that everyone wants him home again. The mistakes and choices he has made are all in the past now. Kylo Ren takes his lightsaber off his belt and drops it to the floor, leaving it there forever. Kylo had returned to the light side of the Force and was now Ben Solo again. Rey, Finn and Chewie all saw this happen and met up with both of them. Rey and Finn were scared to be around Ben. All they had ever seen him do was commit atrocities. Ben explained to them that he was wrong, and he is now trying to undo his mistakes. The group go back to the Falcon and leave Starkiller Base for good, before the Resistance pilots eventually blow it up. On the far distant planet of Exegol, Palpatine received word that Kylo Ren had been turned to the light. This was an unforeseen error in his plans. He knew that Ren would eventually overthrow Snoke and take his place as Supreme Leader. I mean, he pretty much programmed Snoke to act in a way that allowed Kylo to kill him. But for him to turn back to the light this soon was unexpected. He hadn't planned for this. This meant that Palpatine had to alter what he had intended to happen next. He needed a new apprentice, someone that was strong and didn't need to be trained by Snoke. In fact, Snoke was pretty much thrown to the side at this point. Palpatine called for his followers on Exegol to help him perform Sith magic. Out of thin air came the helmet of his former apprentice Darth Vader, or otherwise known as Anakin Skywalker. Placing his hands over the destroyed helmet, he spoke in a language unknown to the Republic. It was ancient Sith dialect that none today could understand. As the cult-like followers of Sidious chanted the words as well, Vader rose from the table reborn. Through this rebirth, the light within Vader was tossed aside. He embodied the dark side and craved the death of the Jedi. Palpatine smiled as he explained Vader's objectives to him. Leia hugged her son when she saw him again. This boy had been gone for years at this point. He had made enemies and killed thousands. But at the end of the day, he was still Leia and Hans' son. The Resistance were adamant on accepting him back, but ultimately did out of respect and trust for Leia Organa. Their next task would be locating Luke Skywalker. R2-D2 would be able to give them the missing piece of the map in order to find Luke. Rey and Ben would both leave the Resistance base and head to Ahch-To, where the map pointed. For Rey, she had never met Luke and only heard stories which she originally deemed to be myths. But Ben Solo had slaughtered every student in Luke's Jedi Academy and caused him endless pain. When Luke laid eyes on Ben Solo, his first instinct was to fight him, but he could feel a shift within his heart. He sensed that Ben was good now and wasn't full of darkness. When Rey handed Luke his lightsaber, he pondered the thought of taking it. If he reached out and took his old Jedi saber, he would be accepting the fact that his choices were wrong. He shouldn't have left, and because he did leave, the galaxy fell into the hands of the First Order. The conflict within Luke was like a violent wave heading for the sandy beach. Luke gazed up at Rey and Ben. He raised his right arm, still robotic after his father Lord Vader chopped it off on Cloud City. Luke Skywalker took the saber. As the three entered the Falcon again, words were shared between Luke and Ben, full of sorrow and regret. They both had made bad decisions, which led them to this point. But they couldn't change the past and instead had to focus on the future. As they returned to the base, everyone was panicking and running from A to B. No one ever took notice of the great Luke Skywalker who had just returned after years away in solitude. Finding Leia and Han, only a short reunion was had when Leia explained the situation. An entire Resistance fleet was decimated earlier that day. When the reports of the attack were told to the Resistance, only one name was said: Darth Vader. After over 30 years, the Dark Lord had returned and already caused the Resistance to lose most of their allies. The second the galaxy found out about Vader, they curled into a shell and stopped any assistance they were giving to the Resistance. They remembered what the Empire did to them only a generation ago. Luke explained that they need to go and find a way to defeat Vader. He had done it once before, but only because he tapped into the dark side, something he wouldn't let Rey or Ben ever do. Ben said that during his time in the First Order, he would visit Vader's castle on Mustafar, which held many artifacts and dark side items that may potentially help them. The others agreed and they left for Mustafar. Arriving, they flew straight to Vader's castle. Entering, the dark side energy rose as the castle felt the souls of the light. As they strolled through the castle halls, paintings of ancient Sith Lords long dead hung upon the wall. Darth Bane, Darth Malgus, and even Darth Plagueis, just to name a few. As they rounded the final corner, entering a nearby room, it was stacked with Sith holocrons, most of which were sealed shut. Ben had never come this far into the temple, he said. His old master Snoke always told him that the further inside the temple he went, the more he would lose his soul. As they continued to walk through the halls, they entered the final room, deepest in the castle. It was almost like a shrine, a dimly lit room full of memories. Carvings on the wall and boxes full of random things. Luke pulled out a hologram that showed Padme. It was one of the first times that he had ever seen his mother. He had seen images of her before, but this was different. It felt so real. She stood dressed in her beautiful Naboo outfit, ready for the day in all of her glory. Luke closed the hologram and stored it in his pocket. He didn't know what to do with it. When they looked up at the wall, a massive portrait hung on the wall of Anakin's mother. She was on Tatooine. As they stared at the large image of Anakin's mother, the sound of a lightsaber ignition was heard behind them. As they all turn around, Lord Vader stands with his crimson blade lit. Rey, Ben, and Luke all ignite their lightsabers, ready to challenge Darth Vader. This had almost been a childhood dream of Ben's, but now that it was about to happen, he was terrified. With the clash of each swing, Vader grew more strong. Luke remembered his style. Although it had been decades since they last fought, their duel on the Death Star haunted his dreams for nearly half that time. Rey couldn't keep up with the immense strength and power of Vader, not to mention the fact that the giant robotic man stood nearly 2 feet taller than her. Rage consumed Vader for the intruders in his home. The man that Palpatine had brought back to life had no recollection of having a son. It was almost like he pulled Vader directly out of the timeline before he discovered Luke Skywalker. Vader was able to knock Rey to the ground and push Ben Solo away with the Force. He raised his metal arms in preparation of killing Rey when Luke threw the hologram message of Padme in front of him. As she appeared before him, he stumbled back, dropping his lightsaber to the floor. He muttered her name under his breath as he stared at her in sadness. Reaching out with his fingertips, he attempted to touch the hologram to feel his dead wife. This gave Ben Solo enough time to impale Lord Vader through the back and kill him. He took his final breath, staring into the eyes of his wife, the one true love of his sad and depressing life. The three exhaled quickly. Vader was dead, but now what? It wasn't like the First Order was destroyed. Someone had to have brought Vader back to life, and now they needed to find out who that was. The three exited Vader's castle and made their way back to the Resistance. End of part 1. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now obviously there will be a part 2 to this, but I want your guys' help with writing it. What do you think will happen next? It is about time that Palpatine gets involved, so how do you think that will happen? Han and Leia are still both alive at this point as well, and also Luke. I thought of killing Luke off in the story, but I thought that having him almost as a guide for Rey and Ben would be quite nice. almost as him acting as the master as Obi-Wan did to him so many years prior. I know Vader being resurrected was a little bit far-fetched, but what story is fun if it's not slightly unrealistic? Besides, it led to a cool story on Mustafar, with Luke getting to look through his old father's possessions. I wonder what else could have been stored hidden in that final room deep in the castle. In my head, I thought that room could hold a bunch of Anakin's items, things he probably shouldn't own as a Sith Lord. That's why a massive painting of his mother was there, as well as the hologram of Padme. But what other items do you think could have been stored there? I thought maybe a pair of his Jedi robes hanging on the wall could have been cool, or maybe the hilt of his first lightsaber. I'm not too sure. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed it, and may the Force be with you.